The story began with the nobles gathered together, giggling as they looked at a miserable boy. One of the nobles pointed his finger at the boy, intending to attack him with the magic power he possessed. However, before delivering the fatal blow, the noble granted the boy permission to retaliate, a last parting gift before the inevitable. The boy's situation was pitiable, covered in blood and injuries. Exhausted, he raised his hand and attempted to counterattack with the remaining magical power he had left. Unfortunately, the fire attack he produced dissipated without causing any harm to the arrogant noble. Brushing off the boy's feeble attack, the arrogant noble reminded him of the three most important things for magicians: pedigree, talent, and effort. Quoting William Bolt as the father of all mages, the noble emphasized that no matter how hard one works, without the right lineage or a sufficient amount of talent, success is unattainable. The noble then pointed his finger at the boy, generating magical energy and clarifying that effort alone was not the sole prerequisite. In other words, regardless of one's hard work, without being born into the right circumstances or possessing inherent talent, success was elusive. As the noble produced an overwhelming fire before the boy's eyes, he declared that magic would never be the boy's skill. With the burning flames of noble magic engulfing the boy, the nobleman walked away, leaving the suffering boy behind. In the midst of excruciating pain before his imminent death, the boy found the burning magic fire to be brilliant. He admired the magic of a noble who was blessed in every aspect. Though it was hot and beautiful, even brilliant, to him as he turned into ashes, he wished he had more time to study magic under such a master. He went unconscious, but when he suddenly opened his eyes, he saw himself surrounded by maids. Confused, he realized he was now a baby in a cradle. Pondering his whereabouts and looking at the maids, he attempted to scare them with a fireball. However, when he tried to produce magic, he found himself lacking sufficient magic power. Feeling his tiny hands, the little fireball he produced dissipated. When the maid saw smoke coming out of the baby's finger, she got scared and shouted intensely in fear. The entire kingdom buzzed with the news that Salem Kingdom now had a seventh prince, and Prince Lloyd had been born. 10 years later in the Salem Kingdom, the seventh prince was mischievous, a 10-year-old kid now. Two nobles standing in the corridor talked about hunting when suddenly they noticed Lloyd running and playing. They called out to Lloyd, but he ran away, frustrating the noble. One noble acknowledged that Lloyd was the seventh prince, much younger than his other siblings, and could not even be considered as an heir, so there was no point in giving him special treatment. However, the other noble called him stupid for thinking that way. He revealed that Lloyd understood their language right out of the womb, rifled through spell books instead of picture books, rejected mother's milk like a gentleman, and most importantly, was believed to be the reincarnation of the famous mage and father of magic, William Bolt. The other nobleman found this revelation ridiculous. Meanwhile, Lloyd knew that they were right since he was, in fact, reincarnated. He acknowledged that he wasn't William Bolt, but a normal citizen of Salem. The maids came searching for Lloyd, calling his name while Lloyd hid himself, pondering the reason for his reincarnation as the seventh prince or why he remembered his previous life. Despite holding a status of prince in his new life, he still felt the same way as before and did not care about fame or fortune. The only thing he cared about was learning and mastering the art of casting more spells. That alone interested him. He went to the library and found it to be a brilliant place, even compared to Salem's magic schools. However, one of the maids, Silpha, finally found the mischievous Lloyd in the library. Knowing that he was going to be considered as an heir, he did not see any value in sword practice, especially since he acknowledged the fact that he wasn't very athletic even in his previous life. Silpha, the maid, was persistent and always reminded him that succession was not everything. Those of royalty should at least learn swordsmanship. She had been his instructor for 3 years and considered it the purpose of life to train him. Lloyd had known that if he did not take Silpha seriously, she would have kept him there all day. So he decided to practice swordsmanship as well and exchanged a few blows with her. The maid praised his efforts and pointed out his significant improvement. Lloyd acknowledged that she had been going easy on him, but with time she had been holding back a little less each day. That is why Lloyd had been using control magic on himself to mirror Silpha's movements, creating an experience as if she were fighting a clone of herself. Lloyd acknowledged his cheating because he wanted to return to reading as soon as possible after finishing the sword practice. However, Lloyd still struggled to keep up with her, even with the use of clone magic. The differences in their strength, reach, and height were crucial factors in their fight, regardless of copying her movements exactly. The significant disparities in their body types made him struggle against Silpha. Determined to fix this issue, Lloyd decided to conduct an experiment and resorted to using even more magic to cheat. He employed strength magic to enhance his weak body, used growth magic to extend his sword, and manipulated his physique for his benefit. With the added strength of magic, he was able to execute better maneuvers in mid-air due to less weight and successfully posed a challenge to Silpha on equal grounds. Having addressed both the power and distance problems he faced against her, Lloyd was finally able to imitate her as if she were fighting a complete mirror image of herself. Adding the cherry on top, Lloyd, despite perfectly imitating her fighting style, also executed sudden and different moves, such as the trace cancel, to gain an edge over her. However, Silpha was consistently able to easily counter his attacks, shocking Lloyd. Recognizing Lloyd's use of magic to enhance his abilities, she pointed out his cheating, making Lloyd uncomfortable and uneasy. After dodging his next attack, Silpha skillfully disarmed him, sending him flying to the other side. She had already deduced that Lloyd was using magic to extend the length of his sword, as she could never mistake the deceptive distance he maintained during their combat. Lloyd, leveraging his short stature to his advantage, utilized float magic to align himself with Silpha. Despite recognizing this action as cheating, Silpha, with a firm heart and a confident smile, praised him for the talents he possessed. In a moment of encouragement, she revealed that activating two magics at once was even challenging for experienced mages. She expressed her acceptance of Lloyd's growth at his own pace, but was determined not to let him escape the standards of fair play. Lloyd realized that Silpha had not detected his movement tracing or body reinforcement magics. Deciding to keep quiet about the fact that he was actually using 4 spells at once, and maintained a discreet silence on the matter. While in the kingdom's castle, Lloyd found himself in an embarrassing situation. Despite his reluctance, he was surrounded by numerous maids during his bath in the maid dormitory bathing hall. The maids insisted on his participation, as Lloyd had a tendency to skip bathing and immerse himself in books, ultimately turning him into a bookworm. Feeling exposed and out of his comfort zone, Lloyd confessed that his true desire was to explore more tomes. The maids, amused by his admission, decided to playfully tease him with an old legend. According to the tale, there was a malevolent force known as the Mage that targeted disobedient individuals. The legend warned that those who did not follow orders would be devoured by the Mage, a creature that had once wrought havoc on the country of Salum. After the struggles of many mages, the Mage was finally sealed within a forbidden grimoire. The maid further added that the sealed book in the prohibited book section was located beneath the castle. However, she dismissed it as just a fairy tale, finding it ridiculous to entertain the idea of a Mage sealed below the castle. As she spoke, Lloyd trembled at the thought, finding the notion unsettling. Amused by Lloyd's reaction, the maid found his fear endearing, referring to him as cute for being scared of the supposed bad Mage that once threatened Prince Salum. In the midst of the banter, the maids began arguing about who would get the privilege of having Lloyd sleep with them. Silpha, asserting her position as his teacher, insisted on being the first to share a room with him. As the maids engaged in a heated dispute over Lloyd's sleeping arrangements, he saw an opportunity and silently slipped away from the commotion. Deep in thought about the forbidden book, Lloyd contemplated the mysterious tales surrounding the sealed grimoire hidden beneath the castle. Amidst the vigilant watch of 2 knights assigned to guard the entrance of the forbidden library, they acknowledged the significance of their duty. Beyond the entrance lay books that recorded powerful magic capable of shaking the foundation of the country. They added a chilling detail: a sealed Mage resided down there. Unbeknownst to them, Lloyd managed to sneak past them and approach the entrance of the forbidden library. The next challenge for Lloyd was the sealed library door, a formidable obstacle secured by the combined powers of 10 mages, constituting the ultimate seal. Despite its reputation, Lloyd surprisingly breezed through the door with ease. As he entered the library, a sense of excitement overcame him, encountering an exotic place he had never seen in his 10 years of living in the castle. He eagerly explored every corner before quickly focusing on his mission. After meticulous searching, Lloyd finally found the book housing the sealed Mage. Upon opening the book, the monstrous figure emerged, bound in chains that confined him. Astonishingly, the creature praised Lloyd for breaking the seal on the library door, expressing admiration for the boy's incredible feat. Introducing himself as a grimoire, the Mage inquired about Lloyd's name and shared his own. When the Mage requested Lloyd to free him from the chains of the seal, Lloyd remained resolute and unyielding. In response, the Mage conveyed that one day, the deteriorating seal would break, and he would be set free, returning sooner or later. Acknowledging the potential threat to the country, Lloyd decided to reseal the Mage, understanding the responsibility he bore in using the country as a haven for his magical research. Lloyd straightened the chains he wore as part of the seal, while the Mage pleaded with him. In a desperate attempt to secure his freedom, the Mage went a step further and offered to teach Lloyd ancient magic knowledge lost to time, originating from hundreds of years ago. Despite the Mage's earnest pleas and enticing proposition, Lloyd remained unmoved and resolute. However, in a sudden turn of events, Lloyd's mind shifted, and he found himself intrigued by the prospect of learning ancient magic. He decided to inquire further, asking the Mage if he was truly willing to impart this ancient knowledge. The Mage agreed, acknowledging Lloyd's change of heart. Furthermore, the Mage pointed out to Lloyd that he possessed an innate talent for magic, a gift since birth that could potentially be honed and developed. Upon hearing the Mage mention his innate talent for magic, Lloyd's mind flashed back to the words of a noble before his demise. The noble had conveyed to him the unfortunate reality of his inability for magic, attributing it to being unblessed by the bloodline and devoid of innate talent. The memories of that conversation resonated with Lloyd. However, in response to the Magin's comment on his magical aptitude, Lloyd affirmed his abilities with newfound confidence, his face illuminated by determination. He boldly declared that if magical disposition could be considered a combination of blood and talent, then surely he possessed a body more blessed than commoners. In that decisive moment, Lloyd conjured a magical key and unbound the Magin from his seals. Even the Magin found himself unable to comprehend Lloyd's unexpected decision to set him free. In a moment of indulgence, Lloyd reminded the Magin of their agreement. Recognizing Lloyd standing there, the Magin unleashed a powerful attack, the black laser cannon, in an attempt to blow Lloyd off. As he began to contemplate what he would do with his newfound freedom, the dust settled. The Magin was shocked to see Lloyd standing unhinged within a protective barrier. The strange incantation and construction forming before him left the Magin perplexed, realizing that Lloyd possessed unique and unconventional methods of magical invocation and protection. With no trace of fear and a casual tone, Lloyd expressed his desire to witness more of the Magin's attacks. Growing frustrated, the Magin began bombarding Lloyd with relentless attacks, but Lloyd remained unhinged and calm, his demeanor unchanged despite the Magin's hardest attempts to overpower him. Even the powerful black laser cannon failed to faze him, adding to the Magin's growing frustration. Undeterred, the Magin continued his onslaught, bombarding Lloyd while he remained protected within his defensive barrier. Lloyd, intrigued by the magic being used against him, started to whirl his finger over the Magin's attacks, examining the magic's structure up close. Though the intense magic nearly melted his finger, Lloyd, protected by his barrier, asked the Magin for another demonstration. Growing increasingly frustrated with Lloyd's nonchalant attitude, the Magin decided to employ his best and utilized a double incantation. With a swift motion of his hands, he created another formidable attack, a spiral black laser cannon, and unleashed it at Lloyd with full force. Though hit by the attack, Lloyd remained calm within his defensive barrier, analyzing the magic type and its structure. Upon closer inspection, Lloyd found the Magin's magic fascinating. It required a parallel curse as a prerequisite, an impossible feat for him to produce. The Magin had skillfully woven together two spells, creating an advanced version of his earlier black laser attack. Impatient, the Magin threw another special attack, but Lloyd and his barrier remained unscathed. After putting in considerable effort, the Magin turned frustrated and attempted to leave the library. However, to his dismay, he found himself trapped within the barrier. Lloyd, demonstrating his mastery, had encompassed the entire library within his advanced defensive barrier. Frustrated, Grimoire the Magin inquired about the barrier, and Lloyd clarified that, due to a past accident, he had decided to implement barriers on everything to prevent unintentional harm. Ready to showcase his strength, Lloyd prepared the magic Ardent Flame Fireball and instructed the Grimoire to demonstrate his defense magic. Terrified, Grimoire watched as Lloyd unleashed a ferocious attack that engulfed the entire library within the barrier. Everything inside fell victim to Lloyd's catastrophic assault, reducing it to rubble. Amidst the settling dust and light, Lloyd stood unharmed, confused by the outcome. He observed Grimoire lying there, half dead, and approached him, questioning why he had not defended himself. After the cataclysmic attack transformed everything into rubble, Lloyd, utilizing his magical abilities, reversed the destruction, restoring the library to its original form. Grimoire, shocked by this display of abilities, received praise from the Grimoire for his talented skills. In return, Lloyd acknowledged the Grimoire's amazing abilities. Intrigued by the concept of immortality in the Magin race, Lloyd inquired with the Grimoire about it. Grimoire explained that while they do not die, they still experience pain. Expressing wonder about the extent of Magin immortality, Lloyd's curiosity led him to explore the Grimoire's feelings. In response, Grimoire, fearing Lloyd's potential experiments, pleaded with him formally and expressed a desire to become Lloyd's familiar. Lost in thought, he revealed his concern that the Grimoire's formal appearance would attract too much attention. Insisting on a transformation, Lloyd suggested Grimoire turn into something smaller. Acknowledging the concern, Grimoire immediately transformed into a cute little goat. Grimoire, now in a new appearance, maintained an intense demeanor as he inquired about his altered look. Unbeknownst to Lloyd, Grimoire was secretly devising a plan to make Lloyd fall in love, aiming to exploit that vulnerability to seize an opportunity to eliminate him. Standing at a distance, Lloyd asked him to come closer while Grimoire questioned whether it was okay for him to get close. Lloyd affirmed, seemingly oblivious to Grimoire's hidden motives. Meanwhile, Grimoire dismissed Lloyd as a naive kid for letting a Magin close to him. Grimoire contemplated how Magin race possessed a unique ability to control hearts and minds at will. Grimoire intended to exploit this power to get close to Lloyd and eventually take control of his entire being. As Grimoire jumped onto Lloyd and clung to him under his cape, an unexpected sensation overwhelmed the Magin. The intense presence of Lloyd's magic felt crushing to Grimoire, who immediately deemed Lloyd inhuman. Although Grimoire felt an intimidating force, Lloyd, unaware of Grimoire's inner turmoil, recognized Grimoire's unease and inquired if he had caught a cold. Grimoire decided to comply with Lloyd's wishes, realizing that direct opposition might not be the best course of action. In the kingdom, while Lloyd engrossed himself in reading books in the library, his brother Alberto appeared on the scene, teasing him for being a nerd. Grimoire, curious about the newcomer, learned that Alberto was the second prince of Salem, skilled in both the pen and the sword. Rumors even suggested he might be next in line to become the king. Lloyd, however, revealed his lack of interest in the succession, setting the stage for the dynamics within the royal family. At the Saloon Castle's magic shooting range, the royals engaged in archery practice. Lloyd's brother, Alberto, effortlessly hit his targets, drawing cheers from the maids and butlers. Even Lloyd could not help but feel admiration for his brother's skills. In the midst of the activity, Lloyd shared with Grimoire his interest in practicing fire magic, lamenting the limited opportunities for such displays within the castle walls. Lloyd revealed that, due to Alberto's expected role as the successor, he had privileged access to various facilities in the castle. While Alberto often invited Lloyd, he showed no interest in participating, dismissing it as a child's game. Lloyd, concerned about standing out too much and potentially affecting his brother's standing, preferred to remain inconspicuous. He was content as long as his magical research continued without hindrance. Ready to shoot targets, Lloyd decided to try something different. He intentionally curved the fireball to merely scratch the targets. When he threw the ball, it grazed all 10 targets effortlessly. The butlers and maids applauded, showing admiration for Lloyd's unique approach. Grimoire, astute as always, realized that Lloyd had intentionally grazed all the targets, showcasing his control over the magical flames. Reflecting on his hits, Lloyd discovered the effectiveness of adding rotation to the fireball. This adjustment made it easier for him to control the trajectory of the flames, resulting in the intentional bend without exerting excessive magical energy. Lloyd, always exploring new possibilities, continued to refine his magical techniques in the pursuit of knowledge and mastery. In a moment, Lloyd's brother Alberto headed back to the castle, informing Lloyd to play as much as he wanted. The maids and butlers insisted on accompanying Alberto. Seizing the opportunity, Lloyd intended to have the entire empty practice field to himself. He expressed his desire to Grimoire to practice a double incantation, shocking the Magian. Grimoire informed him that it was impossible for Lloyd to perform a double incantation as it required using 2 mouths, a unique ability possessed only by Magian. Undeterred, Lloyd had a solution in mind. He reached for Grimoire, absorbed him into his hand, and made him a part of his body. Grimoire, frustrated and shocked, realized that no sane person would willingly integrate a Magian into their own body. Lloyd now had the 2 mouths necessary for the double incantation. As Lloyd prepared, he inquired if Grimoire could chant the Ardent Fireball spell. Grimoire affirmed, confident in his ability to cast such a high-level spell. Lloyd asked him to be prepared to chant after counting to 3. As they readied themselves, Grimoire felt an intense surge, getting overwhelmed and screaming out loud. Lloyd experienced the same reaction. To address Grimoire's confusion, Lloyd explained the concept of incantation rolls, a method to shorten the required chants for an incantation. By condensing several spells into a single form, one could reduce the activation time. Lloyd revealed that he had put about 100 spells into a single chant, recited it in one breath, and then rolled them up into what sounded like a single word. Grimoire showed concern about the consequences of chanting 100 spells, as he could only handle 1 to 3 chants at a time. Lloyd, realizing this limitation, decided to use Grimoire's mouth as well. Grimoire, shocked by Lloyd's intentions, worried about the potential outcomes. Lloyd commenced the chant, weaving the 100 spells into a double incantation. Grimoire felt the overwhelming intensity of the magic, a fusion of high-level and diverse spells simultaneously. The magical energy was abnormal, and after the multiplication process, Lloyd produced a double incantation with his 100 spells. Lloyd directed his hand toward the targets and released the spell into the sky. However, the sheer intensity caused everything to be obliterated. Meanwhile, back in the castle, Alberto had tea, and when asked by Butler about his interest in the 7th prince, he called them blind for not noticing Lloyd's remarkable feat of hitting every target. Alberto praised Lloyd as one of the best mages of the future, and the maids and butlers were in awe. The butler playfully remarked about praising the future sage, and Alberto acknowledged Lloyd's exceptional skill. When they looked outside toward shooting grounds, they observed that all the targets were pierced. The maids and butlers praised Lloyd for this extraordinary accomplishment. Lloyd, feeling tired, decided to take a rest. Alberto acknowledged his exhaustion and suggested celebrating the achievement at dinner since the sun had already gone down. However, the butler, confused, looked at his watch, realizing that the sun had not yet set. Lloyd sat in the library, engrossed in reading a newspaper, to Grimoire's intrigue. When asked about the reason for reading a newspaper, Lloyd, surprising, revealed that he had already read every book in the entire library. To combat boredom, he turned to the newspaper as a last resort. Despite being grateful for the wealth of knowledge gained from reading the library books, Lloyd sought the thrill of surprising news. The newspaper featured an exciting story about a class adventure party conquering a dungeon and discovering numerous riches, along with magic-infused items. Intrigued by the news, Lloyd decided that he wanted to explore a dungeon himself. However, Grimoire opposed the idea and attempted to dissuade him, expressing concerns about the seventh-year prince wandering off alone. While acknowledging Lloyd's abilities, Grimoire harbored doubts about potential unknown dangers within dungeons and cautioned him against pursuing the idea. Lloyd, struck by a creative idea, produced an acorn and enchanted it with a magic spell. To his amazement, the acorn began to grow and transformed into a lifelike clone of Lloyd. Grimoire marveled at the realism of the clone. Lloyd further revealed that he not only replicated the appearance, but also induced the growth of bark, mimicking bones and muscles, while simulating a circulatory and nervous system. The clone even executed simple movements automatically, leaving Grimoire astounded by the ease with which Lloyd created a body double. However, Lloyd stressed the intensity of the task, emphasizing that if creating a clone were as simple as it appeared, he would have done it already. The next challenge was to avoid detection by his perceptive teacher Silpha, who could easily discern any subtle change in Lloyd's identity. Lloyd had a plan to address this issue. He ventured out of the castle with a carefully devised escape plan. Lloyd fused Grimoire into his hand. One of the Grimoire's eyes was transplanted into the clone, providing a means for Grimoire to see everything that the clone experienced. The elaborate plan aimed to ensure the success of Lloyd's venture beyond the castle walls without arousing suspicion. The Grimoire successfully became Lloyd's double, and Grimoire was amazed by Lloyd's feat. Placing Grimoire's body in his hand, Lloyd divided it into the wooden doll. Lloyd instructed Grimoire to be cautious around Silpha and play the part of Lloyd convincingly. Grimoire, still amazed, acknowledged that if the doll had the magic flowing through it, it could accomplish anything. However, in a sudden realization, Grimoire's demeanor shifted as he began devising an evil plan. With Lloyd absent from the castle, Grimoire saw an opportunity to execute his sinister intentions, believing there was no one to thwart his plans. Just as Grimoire was plotting, Lloyd called out to him, startling Grimoire. Lloyd expressed his happiness at having Grimoire as a familiar, revealing that he was counting on him. Despite Grimoire's initial thoughts of mischief, Lloyd's trust and reliance on him brought a sense of responsibility and purpose to their partnership. Grimoire blushed and seemed embarrassed by Lloyd's acknowledgement. Lloyd, noticing Grimoire's reaction, inquired if everything was all right. Frantically, Grimoire urged Lloyd to return as soon as possible. Lloyd agreed but felt a sense of relief that he had finally ventured out of the castle. Now out in the open, Lloyd realized he had no idea about the location of the dungeons. Levitating in the sky, he wondered if there was someone he could ask for directions. However, he recognized that he was already quite far from the castle, making it strange for anyone to be out in this remote area. Suddenly, a cloud of dust caught Lloyd's attention. As he looked down, he witnessed orcs chasing a girl with the intent to attack. To Lloyd's surprise, the girl abruptly halted and retaliated, stunning him. She skillfully dispatched each orc one by one with fierce and precise moves, even splitting them apart with her bare hands. Lloyd watched in awe as the girl displayed remarkable combat prowess. Lloyd observed the girl's martial arts skills from a distance, thoroughly surprised by her expertise. Recognizing the technique she employed, he realized it was a form of breath control. Lloyd was already acquainted with this technique from his readings about a foreign concept known as Kai. This technique involved circulating one's breath inside the body, unlocking extraordinary power. Intrigued by the Kai technique, Lloyd marveled at the girl's display of mastery. As she stood there, confidently smiling, she conveyed an authority that suggested the orcs would need 100 years to match her prowess. The girl, noticing Lloyd, who was hiding from afar, displayed an impressive ability to detect his presence even from that distance. Lloyd pondered whether to reveal himself, as he wanted to inquire about dungeons and the Kai technique she used. However, Grimoire opposed the idea, warning of the potential revelation of Lloyd's identity as the Seventh Prince. When Lloyd hesitated to emerge from hiding, the girl, deduced him to be a potential threat or enemy, took matters into her own hands. She leaped into the air, reaching the hill where Lloyd was concealed. As she approached, Lloyd frantically considered his options. Eventually, he transformed into a formal appearance, greeting her and introducing himself as Roberto, a new adventurer. While her face was turned away, the girl introduced herself as Tao, revealing her adventure rank as B. She was a martial artist. Lloyd felt confusion, wondering if she was suspicious of his altered form. Suddenly, she burst out in admiration, expressing her thrill at finding Lloyd's appearance very handsome. After 18 years of commitment to training, having finally left her dojo to become an adventurer, she was ecstatic to encounter someone as handsome as Lloyd. Tao revealed her desire to make him her boyfriend. However, Lloyd, with due respect, inquired and asked for her assistance in conquering a dungeon together. He inquired if she was busy, but in a sudden moment she told him to leave it to her. Thus became a member of Lloyd's party. They ventured into the B-ranked difficulty dungeon. Inside, Tao stood before the monsters and effortlessly wiped out the entire horde with a single blow, intending to impress Lloyd and make him fall in love. However, Lloyd's attention was captivated by the dungeon crystals scattered around, and he did not seem to notice her display. Frustrated, Tao sought acknowledgement, but Lloyd reassured her that he saw her and praised her for being amazing. He then inquired if she was a solo adventurer, and she confirmed it, mentioning that she had not found any male adventurer friends, prompting her to embark on solo adventures. During a break in the dungeon, as they sat down to eat, Lloyd asked about the Kai attack. Tao, surprised that someone from the continent was familiar with the technique, inquired about Lloyd's understanding of it. Lloyd shared his insights, likening the Kai technique to magic power in sorcery, emphasizing the significance of breath control. Impressed, Tao elaborated on the technique, explaining that Kai training involved circulating breath to unleash a mysterious power. It required extensive training to feel the Kai within the body. Playfully, she teased Lloyd to utilize her presence for easier breathing training. Lloyd sat there, relaxed, and started the breath training for Kai. As he tried, his lungs felt overwhelming pressure, causing sharp pain. Tao looked at him concerned and inquired if he was trying to use Kai. She revealed that he was attempting to imitate what he saw when she was fighting. She immediately scolded him for trying to use Kai. She warned him against doing so without proper training, as it could result in intense burning in his lungs. Despite the warning, Lloyd tried again to use Kai. This time, he was certain that he felt something within his body, some type of energy different from magic. Determined to harness this power and combine it with magic, he expressed his resolve. Tao, curious, decided to teach him more about Kai and thanked him for accepting the offer. She told him not to let his breath stop before they left the dungeon, and he agreed. Meanwhile, at the castle, the clone of Lloyd that Grimoire possessed was having tea. Grimoire contemplated the life of Lloyd, acknowledging his immense power and relaxed lifestyle. However, he found it puzzling that Lloyd was not interested in anything other than magic, consistently exploring magical realms. Suddenly, Sylpha appeared in the scene. Her appearance shocked Grimoire as he saw her standing there. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Tao had demonstrated her Kai ability, successfully defeating the dungeon's boss, the Grey Wolf. The treasure chest lay in front of them, waiting to be claimed. Tao pointed out the uniqueness of the treasure box, emphasizing its immaturity. Lloyd, shocked by this revelation, learned that treasure boxes mature over time, finding the concept intriguing. He closely examined the treasure chest from the outside, while Tao acknowledged his interest in the external aspects rather than the contents within. As Lloyd immersed himself in inspecting the treasure box, Tao recognized his abilities, noting how quickly he mastered Kai breathing. Filled with joy, she expressed her happiness at having found a suitable companion and eagerly anticipated starting a relationship with Lloyd. In a decisive moment, Tao decided to open the chest, confident that there was nothing significant inside. However, to her surprise, a blade suddenly emerged from the chest, striking the ground with enough force to create a crack. Tao was shocked by the unexpected attack from the supposedly harmless box. The treasure chest began to rumble, and a creature materialized from within, a skeletal being with a tail, levitating in the air. Both of them were shocked to witness the creature levitating above them. Tao recognized it as a lick, while Lloyd speculated if it was the actual boss they were expecting. Tao clenched her fist, contemplating the monster, revealing that liches are formidable but not overwhelmingly powerful. She urged Lloyd to wait outside, but he insisted on staying to witness her confrontation with the creature. Despite his insistence, Tao disregarded his request and forcefully pushed him out of the dungeon, a shove so powerful it could potentially have caused broken bones. With Lloyd expelled from the dungeon, Tao faced the lick, which immediately launched a barrage of attacks. Tao skillfully dodged the assaults while airborne. The next attack almost connected, but she countered with a powerful kick that redirected the force toward the ground. Tao was surprised to encounter such a potent monster in a low-level dungeon. Even an A-class adventurer would struggle against it. Despite the difficulty, she aimed to stall the monster until Lloyd safely exited the dungeon. As Lloyd soared away from the dungeon due to Tao's forceful push, he contemplated the Kai technique and expressed a keen desire to learn more about it. Taking precautionary measures, he trapped himself inside a defensive barrier to avoid collateral damage. Meanwhile, the monsters within the dungeon were also drawn against the barrier walls and the ground. Wondering about Tao's reasons for forcefully ejecting him from the dungeon, Lloyd sought to communicate with Grimoire. However, Grimoire remained unresponsive, prompting Lloyd to shake him gently. To his dismay, he discovered Grimoire half unconscious, seemingly pleading to be rescued. Meanwhile, within the dungeon, Tao faced the lick with all her might, realizing that she was overwhelmed and on the verge of losing her life. With Lloyd already outside, she decided to make her way out as well. The lick, however, began speaking about Kai, catching Tao off guard. It proceeded to share memories of the Kai technique from another country and revealed that it had devoured someone who once practiced the technique. The Lick scorned the Kai technique as an inferior substitute for magic, leaving Tao shocked and angered by the disparaging comments. The Lick continued, deemed Tao unworthy of being consumed based on Lick's past experiences of devouring souls of someone with sane abilities and the knowledge it had acquired. The Lick expressed its desire to devour Lloyd, citing his reaction to the first attack as the reason. Tao engaged in conversation with the Lick, highlighting the differences between Lloyd and the Lick itself. She explained that while both were eager to learn, Lloyd possessed a unique quality finding meaning even in a single pebble. Tao took pride in this distinction, as the Kai technique was often dismissed as a martial art for novices, yet Lloyd still found it fascinating. Disregarding Tao's words, the Lick activated a barrier, rendering her attacks ineffective. Undeterred, Tao relentlessly attacked the Lick, ignoring the defensive barrier. She had been training her Kai diligently since the age of 5, irrespective of weather conditions or relationship status. The Lick, unfazed, dismissed her efforts. In her fury, Tao blew away the defensive barrier and stood in a stance, warning the Lick not to underestimate her. However, the exhaustion and stress took a toll, causing her to collapse due to the overuse of Kai. The Lick, calling her pathetic, approached and gathered magic on its fingertip. It revealed that Tao had managed to pierce its barrier with her point-blank Kai technique, but the magic it possessed surpassed hers. The Lick criticized her for dedicating her life to a skill that ultimately proved futile. As the Lick prepared a formidable attack called Death Fang, Lloyd unexpectedly appeared, surrounded by a barrier, and intervened to save Tao. Observing Tao on the ground, he inquired if she had given up, declaring his intention to take down the Lick and urging it to start the showdown. As Tao rose from the ground, she was astonished by the protective barrier surrounding her. Lloyd's unexpected return caught her off guard, and his fierce gaze locked onto the Lick. In a split moment, before either the Lick or Tao could comprehend it, Lloyd chanted Magic Dash and instantly appeared behind the Lick. Both Tao and the Lick were shocked by Lloyd's sudden movement, leaving the Lick in wonder as it had not even witnessed Lloyd chanting the spell. The Lick retaliated by bombarding Lloyd with attacks, but he remained safely inside his defensive barrier. Tao stood there, observing Lloyd in action as he utilized a combination of breathing, melding Kai and magic together, creating a complex strategy. Recalling Tao's advice to focus, Lloyd concentrated on his breathing, taking in air deeply. In a surprising move, he dissolved his own defensive barrier, acknowledging the limits it imposed. Tao realized that Lloyd dissolved the barrier not because of the Lick's attacks, but to absorb more air and strengthen his breath. Lloyd began weaving magic and Kai together, bearing the heavy load in his lungs. Successfully fusing the ultimate power of Kai and magic, he relentlessly bombarded the Lick with attacks. The speed of his assault was so rapid that it seemed as if he did not need chance, a fact that the Lick found ridiculous. Lloyd enhanced the precision of his attacks, making them thinner and sharper. His final powerful strike pierced through both the magic barrier and the Lick, splitting them in two. The Lick dispersed in the air, leaving Tao gazing at Lloyd in admiration. Finally achieving his goal, Lloyd basked in a sense of happiness and accomplishment. After the intense fight, they opened the chest only to find an ordinary blade inside. Tao felt disappointed, thinking they had gone through all that trouble for just a knife. However, Lloyd reassured her, suggesting that the dagger seemed to be imbued with some magic. Tao dismissed the idea of the imbued magic being anything special. Suddenly, the treasure chest began to sink into the ground, leaving Lloyd shocked. Tao explained that when the treasure is taken, the dungeon disappears, akin to a lizard cutting off its own tail. She clarified that the treasure chest was the real core of what people call a dungeon. It resides in the ground, absorbing magic items to grow into a dungeon. The chest then absorbs the equipment of adventurers who attempt to conquer it. As it nears conquest, the treasure chest offers up all the items it has absorbed until that point and makes its escape. Lloyd found this fascinating, referring to it as a perfect cycle. He was happy to realize that the treasure chest was the essence of what people considered a dungeon. As the chest sank deep, Lloyd acknowledged that it hides in the ground until it can regrow its power. Tao affirmed it, praising him as an amazing sorcerer. Curious about why he used Kai instead of magic, she wondered if it was for her sake, especially after the Lick made fun of her. However, to her frustration, Lloyd revealed that he used Kai simply because he found it interesting. His response left her uneasy. In a sudden turn, Lloyd remembered something and immediately started levitating. He took the dagger and informed Tao that he was heading home quickly. As he departed, Tao, standing on the ground, looked at him with admiration, especially after witnessing his secret move, Kikuga. Even she cannot use it. She felt even more determined and motivated to train harder, aspiring to become an interesting woman for Lloyd. He affirmed her feelings and launched off towards his home. Tao walked away with admiration for Lloyd, but realized they had not figured out how to contact each other. Meanwhile, Lloyd went directly to the castle and found his replica doll beaten up on the ground in his room. Silpha was in tears, holding a sword, having dueled with Lloyd's replica possessed by Grimoire. She expressed her frustration at the replica becoming weak in the sword fight. Grimoire, lying on the ground, complained to Lloyd for being late, resulting in a severe beating from Silpha. Grimoire examined the knife and found it to be shoddy, complaining about Lloyd being late for such a seemingly insignificant item. Lloyd apologized but emphasized that the knife might hold proper treasure. He put the knife into hot water and scratched its surface. As expected, a magic chant emanated from it, revealing that the knife was coated with magic marrow. The liquid marrow served as the medium for applying magical enchantments to weapons. Anyone could use it to strengthen their weapons. For example, this knife had an enchantment upon it. Further inspection revealed it to be the Increase Strength chant. Lloyd poured the enchanted liquid into the glass container and shook it until the spell was destroyed. He acquired the magic marrow liquid from the knife, noting that magic marrow was expensive and enchantment magic itself was quite challenging. If the enchantment failed, both the liquid and the weapon would be lost. Determined to analyze the marrow and produce it himself, Lloyd applied water magic to purify it. The spell, initially only powerful enough to purify muddy water, could break down substances into their ingredients with continued purification. Lloyd discovered that the ingredients were silver oil and red magic flour. Red magic flour was rare, made by pulverizing the core of a monster. Lloyd decided to create the flour using the treasure chest from the dungeon, excited about acquiring oil, silver, and numerous weapons for enchantment. Lloyd went to his father and acquired a bag of silver coins. His father emphasized whether he was sure he did not want gold coins, but Lloyd insisted on silver. Pleased with Lloyd's modesty, his father wondered what he would use his allowance for. Lloyd obtained his first ingredient, silver, and then headed to acquire the next. During swordsmanship practice with Silpha, he won the battle after an intense struggle. As promised, Silpha helped him acquire the oil. She expressed relief at seeing him strong again, considering he had been weak the day before. Meanwhile, Grimoire, frustrated, wondered why the strongest mage like Lloyd could not defeat a maid, viewing Silpha as a formidable opponent. After acquiring the oil, Lloyd thanked Silpha, who admired him and wished him success in preparing the dish. With oil, silver, and red magic flour in hand, Lloyd finally created the magic marrow and fulfilled his one goal. Next, Lloyd approached his brother and demanded a bunch of weapons to test his magical enchantment skills. Amused by Lloyd's request, his brother revealed that he had been anticipating what kind of request Lloyd would make, emphasizing Lloyd's love for magic. Knowing that his brother had an abundance of elite bodyguards, it was clear he would also possess a vast array of weaponry. His brother asked the knights if anyone wanted their weapons enchanted, and suddenly every knight tossed their weapons for Lloyd to use as he saw fit. However, in reality, the knights were quite skeptical and hesitant since they had to give away their brand new equipment. They were aware that magic enchantments were a high-level skill and often failed. Moreover, entrusting a 10-year-old child with this task added to their lack of confidence in Lloyd's abilities. Nevertheless, they were bound to follow the order from his brother Alberto. After acquiring the weapons, Grimoire was fired up to enchant them and make them the strongest ever seen. With everything in place and even his clone assisting, he began the intense process. With an excited and focused demeanor, Grimoire meticulously wrote enchantments on the weapons. However, to his dismay, the sword broke as he attempted to infuse multiple strengthening enchantments and various others into the limited space. Despite his rigorous efforts, the steel of the sword could not withstand all of Grimoire's enchantments, resulting in a few unsuccessful attempts. After several tries, he managed to successfully enchant 50 swords out of the 120. Lloyd's brother Alberto was surprised to hear the feat Lloyd had achieved. Lloyd apologized for the failure of the remaining 70 swords, but in reality, about 80% of them were a success. A few experiments with particularly ambitious spells caused some of the swords to fail. Alberto was impressed by Lloyd's accomplishment, acknowledging that even high-level enchanters typically have only about a 10% success rate. Lloyd's talent surpassed Alberto's expectations, and he realized that Lloyd was far more skilled than he had initially thought. However, the knights remained skeptical, assuming that Lloyd had merely messed up 70 swords and got scared. In the end, no one doubted his abilities, and they could praise the swords randomly without reason. However, when one of the knights put his sword into his scabbard, the scabbard fell into 2 pieces, the sword he had put in cut through the scabbard. Confused by this unexpected outcome, the knights realized the true potential of the swords. They became happy, and Lloyd expressed his desire to see them using their swords in actual battle. The knights agreed, and Lloyd offered to join them in hunting. As his father had requested, Lloyd, his maid Silpha, and the knights ventured into the forest, heading towards the part where magical beasts were sighted, near the lake ahead of them. Silpha noticed Lloyd's excitement at seeing the knights in action. Lloyd affirmed it, expressing that leaving the mansion like this was a rare event for him. He eagerly anticipated seeing his enchanted weapons and encountering magical beasts. Silpha gazed at Lloyd's happy face, catching the attention of Lloyd's brother, Alberto. Silpha thanked Alberto for letting her join them. Alberto acknowledged her role as a bodyguard and instructor. Alberto inquired if she was interested in Lloyd romantically, but she modestly replied that she was merely his instructor. Alberto playfully teased her, causing her to pick up her sword. However, he calmed her down, assuring her that he was just kidding. In a sudden moment, Silpha felt the presence of monsters. The monsters ambushed them, revealed to be kobolds wielding iron weapons. Alberto deemed it an uncalled-for attack, but the knights considered it a warm-up before facing magical beasts, showing determination to protect Prince Alberto. Lloyd was already aware of the impending attack, having used one of the basic Kai techniques taught by Tao presence detection. With this form of breathing, he was constantly aware of the exact position of everything around him, finding Kai to be quite useful. Grimoire observed Lloyd's growing strength, noting his constant protection and detection. The showdown between the knights and monsters began, and Lloyd's interest peaked. The knights effortlessly slashed the monsters into two pieces, surprising themselves with the power of enchantments. Their swords cut through steel armors without effort. Lloyd was amused to see the success of his enchantments, and the swords performed so well that some soldiers acted like children holding a kitchen knife for the first time in their lives. Alberto seemed quite joyful as the knights headed toward their sweet victory, thanks to Lloyd's ingenious enchantments. He appreciated and praised Lloyd for the great work he had put in. Silpha also appreciated Lloyd's efforts as she stood above the dead horde of monsters she had killed. Lloyd felt uneasy as he looked at her, realizing he had not enchanted Silpha's sword. A monster ferociously approached, and as Lloyd prepared to tackle it, Tao barged in and kicked the monster away with her strong kick. Tao and Lloyd exchanged glances as she effortlessly blew away all the monsters with her Kai technique seated above her horse. She revealed that she had sensed the presence of monsters and came flying, introducing herself as the adventurer Tao. Lloyd was quite tense to see her, realizing he was about to call her out as Alberto, potentially revealing his true identity. He never thought he would meet her in a place like this. Tao noticed Lloyd and approached him, examining him closely. She shared her doubts with Lloyd, stating that she had sensed him using Kai breathing. Convinced that Lloyd was Roberto due to the similar technique and a somewhat similar face, she questioned him about his identity. As Tao pondered the identity, Silpha slashed out a monster that had been standing behind her. Silpha thanked Tao for the help and further advised her not to make the knights work harder. With an intense gaze, Silpha warned Tao not to talk to Lloyd frivolously. Tao responded with an equally intense tone, escalating the situation. Alberto intervened to break the tension. He thanked Tao for her help and insisted that they fight the monsters as a group for the time being. After a while, they finally reached their destination at the lake. Alberto thanked Tao for her help and introduced himself as the second prince of Selum. The revelation shocked Tao, as she did not know she was talking to a prince. She immediately apologized for her rudeness and found Alberto to be quite attractive and hot. Still curious about the Alberto she knew, as he resembled Lloyd, Tao also found Lloyd's brother's presence to be quite familiar. She asked about Lloyd's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Lloyd successfully disappeared from the scene away from Tao. He was quite tense, thinking that his presence detection technique worked against him, and also acknowledged Tao's presence sensing ability to be much more precise. He decided to wait inside the tent until the magic beasts arrived. As he entered the tent, he saw Silpha naked and got hit by her heavy chest. Lloyd inquired about the reason for her presence there. She clarified that she had been changing her clothes since the clothes she wore were covered in blood. Lloyd still questioned why she was in his tent, and she revealed that they both would be sleeping in the tent together tonight. This revelation made him creeped out. Silpha speculated that all guards outside were only protecting their sworn Alberto, and besides, she was the only one here with the ability to protect Lloyd. However, Lloyd insisted on sleeping alone. Silpha clinched him under his thighs and warned him about the dangerous predator outside that is even more dangerous than magic beasts. Tao came running towards Lloyd's tent as she sensed the presence of Roberto in there. She was shocked to see Silpha sitting above his face and felt quite uncomfortable and uneasy looking at her doing perverted things. Silpha stood up and called her an idiot, which angered Tao due to her condescending tone. The argument started between the ladies. Meanwhile, Lloyd felt more uneasy and cramped. At the same time, his brother Alberto also felt the need not to leave Lloyd alone by himself, and acknowledged that Silpha had changed quite a lot after being assigned as the guard. Alberto further noticed romantic feelings toward Lloyd from Silpha. Meanwhile, Silpha and Tao had an argument. Silpha inquired about Tao's presence, and she replied that she had been assigned to a task. Lloyd and Alberto, noticing the conflict unfolding between the two, deemed relationships with women to be a scary thing. Tao revealed to Silpha that she had accepted the request to repair a shrine on that hill. Lloyd overheard something about the shrine, intriguing him. Silpha insisted Tao go there, frustrating her. As she was about to head there, Lloyd intervened and warned her against going alone. He insisted she take someone who can sense presence for reassurance. Lloyd further emphasized that they would wait until dawn for magic beasts and insisted she stay here. Tao wondered and dismissed the idea of waiting for a lookout because the magical beasts had already appeared on the scene, standing in front of them. He crushed the horse beneath his feet, piquing Lloyd's interest. A bear-wolf magical beast appeared in their place of stay, and the knights started to gather around after noticing the threat. The knights marched toward the beast, but it startled them with its long-necked move. The knights decided to keep their distance and wait for an opening. Sylpha told Lloyd to get behind her. Lloyd was amazed to see the bear-wolf's fast movement, and Grimoire had his gaze locked on the other side. Lloyd noticed it was the shrine and realized something. Tao appeared on the scene to land a direct attack upon the magical beast, but it easily dodged her. Alberto was also prepared to face the magical beast. He stood in a stance and chanted a spell, Ardent Fireball, that burned the magical beast to a crisp. Tao was shocked to see Alberto in action, and Lloyd found it amusing. As the knights saw the magical beast fall, a wave of happiness engulfed them, and they burst into cheers for their Prince Alberto, claiming victory using one of the strongest spells. Alberto modestly passed all the credit to his brother Lloyd, stating it was only possible because he had enchanted his sword, thanks to Lloyd. Lloyd was also quite amused by the fact that his enchantments were successful because he was nervous before, as the sword he enchanted looked really expensive. The knights and Alberto also praised Lloyd. Sylpha inquired to Lloyd about the shrine that was used to seal the Magin. In a sudden moment, they sensed something when they turned around. The magical beast Alberto blasted had been revived, and there were more ferocious magical beasts standing by its sides. The presence of even more monsters shocked all of them. They were shocked to see the defeated magical beasts stand up. To complicate matters, there were even more magical beasts there. One of the magical beasts spoke in a condescending tone and called the humans pathetic for hurting his underlings. They were shocked to see the magical beast talk. A head emerged out of the magical beast's mouth, introducing himself as the Majin Pazuzu. He showed his resolve to take revenge against everyone and expressed his desire to take everyone's lives. Tao felt uncomfortable as she looked at the Majin in the mouth. The brawl between the magical beasts and the knights started. Alberto slashed out the monster's face, including its eyes, in the strike. To his surprise, the monster reversed the wound inflicted on it and perfectly healed, as if it was never wounded. Tao entered the scene and kicked the monster to save Alberto from the beast. Tao was frustrated to realize that the beasts were regenerating immediately. Alberto also sensed something different about the magical beasts, noticing some hybrid ones mixed in as well, and they were being controlled by the lower Majin. Lloyd was intrigued to see the Pazuzu Majin, as he had broken his seal in that shrine and got out. He inquired with Grimoire if he knew the Pazuzu Majin since they were both Majin. Grimoire realized that the Pazuzu Majin was using magical nature change magic to control those magical beasts. He further emphasized that, in order to make the magical beasts think of him as their parent, he had changed the nature of his magic by altering the smell or color of his magic according to the beast's taste. The magic Pazuzu poured acted like puppeteer strings, which also served as a conduit for recharging magic in the magical beasts. Grimoire emphasized the need to defeat Pazuzu, stating that if they did not defeat him, the conflict would never end. In that moment, Lloyd pleaded with Grimoire to teach him to use magical nature change magic. Grimoire showed reluctance, considered it a bad idea due to the ongoing life and death situation. However, Lloyd insisted on learning, and Sylpha, the maid, stood before Lloyd to protect him while Tao suffered an attack and pleaded for Sylpha's help. Pazuzu Majin came forward, shouting towards them. Alberto and the knights struggled in the fight. Pazuzu noticed that a few of them seemed fairly skilled, while the rest were just small fry relying on their weapons. Seeing Sylpha guarding Lloyd, Pazuzu wondered about their relationship, assuming she might be hiding Lloyd behind her out of fear. He insulted Sylpha, calling her a trash babysitter. Tao looked at Sylpha standing there, and in that moment, Sylpha decided to enter the battlefield. As Sylpha walked toward Pazuzu, Alberto insisted she stay close to Lloyd. Pazuzu, overly confident in his abilities, began trash-talking when he saw Sylpha approaching. He insulted her and expressed his desire to defeat Sylpha. In response, Sylpha, with the same condescending tone, engaged in trash talk. She referred to Pazuzu as a coward sitting inside a ragged bag, insulted his smell, and claimed it interfered with Lloyd's breathing. Sylpha then declared her resolve to kill him, and the Majin challenged her to do so if she could. Majin Pazuzu stood before Sylpha whole and emphasized his infinite regeneration ability. He highlighted that as long as he continued feeding his underlings, they too would regenerate endlessly. Sylpha stood silently. Majin revealed that he would never run out of magic because he possessed infinite energy. As the Majin spoke, she could not help but put her hand on her face in exasperation. However, he insisted that she not regret her fate, assuring her inevitable death. In response, Sylpha bluntly remarked on the Majin's foul breath and told him to stop talking. Enraged by her comment, Pazuzu Majin opened his jaws and devoured her entirely, shocking Alberto, who witnessed the scene. However, in an instant, Silpha severed the Majin into pieces, scattering them around, and dismissed him as no big deal. She sarcastically told him to get out of his fursuit, but the Majin regenerated once again. Alberto and Tao noticed a change in the movements of the other magical beasts, which became more sluggish. Additionally, their regeneration seemed slower than before. Alberto understood the situation. The reason behind the sluggish performance of the magical beasts was that Majin Pazuzu was focusing his magic on regenerating the bear wolf he resided within. Acknowledging this vulnerability, Alberto ordered Silpha to inflict as much damage as possible until they could regroup. Silpha acknowledged Alberto's order, while the Majin arrogantly labeled them as fools. Meanwhile, the grimoire indulgently taught Lloyd about the magical nature change. The grimoire deemed the ability to be very precise. He emphasized that Pazuzu was skillfully changing the nature of his magic to suit the magical beasts, allowing him to maintain control over them. Using it in a casual setting already required a staggering amount of training, even for a Majin. This was even more so the case for using it in battle. For the basis, the grimoire instructed him to apply color to the magic. From there, he could change things like the shape and smell. Lloyd demonstrated by turning a flower shaped and colored it pink. He even tried adding a scent to it, instructing the grimoire to sniff it as he inspected the flower. The grimoire was quite surprised to see his nearly perfect demonstration. In a single strike, Silpha inflicted a fatal blow to Majin Pazuzu, and both the monster and Pazuzu fell down. She insisted on borrowing a knight's sword. Overwhelmed by her sheer strength, Pazuzu wondered about her, questioning why a woman of her caliber would babysit. Silpha held the sword, acknowledging that it was enchanted by Lloyd himself, and admired his work. Pazuzu realized her determination to save Lloyd, displaying his strength engulfed with magic. He dashed around Silpha, leaving her no corner to escape, threatened her by his intentions to carve Lloyd into tiny pieces and inspect every nook and cranny of his underdeveloped meat. The insult fueled Silpha's fury. Pazuzu attacked from behind and clenched her in his mouth. Silpha, infuriated by his intentions for Lloyd, immediately pierced his mouth with her sword. Enraged, she turned Pazuzu into 100 pieces of flesh with her sword technique, Rangli's style dual sword technique, Rising Twin Dragon. Emerging from him, Pazuzu praised her technique and began regenerating again. Silpha pierced him once more with her sword, turning him into pieces with the Descending Bird technique. Severing the frontal part of the monster, she exposed his head and used her Rangli's style dual sword technique to expose the entire body. She used her dual Tiger Fang technique to finish him off, dismissed him as a disgusting, filthy worm. Silpha reminded him that from the very beginning, a piece of offal like him had no chance of laying a finger on Lloyd. She insisted him to taste the sword of his master as he lay in pieces. The Majin Pazuzu lay before her on the ground, and Silpha noticed something wrong. Meanwhile, the knights were cheering for their victory, thinking the battle was won since they had already defeated the magical beasts. However, Alberto reminded them that the fight was not finished yet. If the Majin was not defeated, the magical beasts would keep regenerating themselves. He ordered the knights to support Silpha, recognizing the importance of finishing the entire threat. In a sudden moment, the Majin started to take heavy breaths, and a mysterious black aura emerged with his breath, startling all of the knights and Silpha herself. The smoke Majin released grabbed Silpha tightly. Meanwhile, Majin began to transform, displaying his dejection and disappointment over his dead familiars. He raised carefully, realizing that all his hard work had been reduced to dust, the culmination of over 100 years since he broke the seal on the shrine. Majin, engulfed in anger fueled by frustration and the loss of his magical beasts, placed blame squarely on Silpha. As she was gripped by the black smoke, Majin ferociously attacked her with a blow so heavy that it nearly left her lifeless on the ground, grappling with her strength as her consciousness faded. She felt as though she was being forced into a deep sleep. Majin revealed his special power of magic, just like those magical beasts. Anyone who breathed black smoke would fall into his hands. This was the miasma of control. The Majin had attempted to launch another attack against her, but in that critical moment, Tao intervened and shielded Silpha from the Majin's devastating blow. Despite Tao's own struggles in the conflict, she turned to Silpha, concerned about her battered condition, and inquired if she could stand. Silpha, exuding confidence, assured Tao that her worries were unfounded, asserting that she was completely fine. She then firmly requested Tao to leave. Expressing her frustration with Silpha's behavior, Tao urged her to escape from the perilous situation. However, instead of heeding Tao's advice, Silpha, despite her miserable state, suggested that Tao protect Lloyd. With determination, Silpha attempted to rise, sword in hand, but her weakened body betrayed her, causing her to collapse once more due to the lack of energy. The Majin Pazuzu commended Silpha for being a formidable swordswoman. Despite being exposed to more of his malevolent miasma than anyone else, Silpha exhibited astonishing strength in facing him. Even magical beasts, who typically succumbed within 30 seconds, could not endure as long as Silpha did before succumbing to unconsciousness. Majin further expressed his curiosity towards Tao as she was not affected by the miasma. As he approached Tao, she was tense and immediately launched an attack, but the Majin easily dodged her and retaliated by striking her back. He picked her up using his tail and realized that she had been using a special breathing method to prevent the miasma from affecting her. While holding her, the Majin suggested that she could become one of his underlings and started licking her body with his tongue. In response, Tao retaliated fiercely, delivering an elbow strike and vehemently denouncing him as an ugly piece of shit. She was about to hit him again, but he dodged the attack and threw her away. Immediately, Tao attacked him with lightning and, as she came down to the ground, barely controlled her breath. She had used her major ability, which caused her to breathe in some of Majin's smoke. She wanted time to neutralize her breathing before going after Majin again, but immediately a monster appeared. The monster opened its gigantic jaws and tried to devour Tao. She found herself stuck in his jaws miserably. She further saw that other magical beasts had already recovered from their injuries, and Majin had also recovered. Majin referred to himself as a hot guy and deemed others lying on the ground as ugly bastards. He approached Tao, who was stuck between the jaws of the monster. The Majin inquired about his underling monsters, revealing their unwavering loyalty and readiness to rise again for his sake, likening them to heroes who would persist no matter how many times it took to stand. Trapped between the monstrous jaws, slimy tentacles began to writhe over Tao's body as the Majin prepared for his next move. Emitting black smoke from his mouth, he intoned his most potent spell, Domination Miasma Magic Concentration, full throttle. Instantaneously, the dark mist engulfed Tao, seeking to infiltrate her lungs. Amidst the chaotic struggle, with the monster's tongue winding around her body, Tao felt the unmistakable presence of Alberto. Just as the sun radiates its warmth, Alberto emanated courage. Confused by Tao's mention, the Majin inquired about whom she was referring to. With emphasis, Tao hailed Alberto as the super hot guy who would undoubtedly thrash the living daylights out of the Majin. In a sudden and horrifying turn of events, the monstrous creature devoured Tao whole, leaving a sense of despair in its wake. Seizing the opportunity, the Majin snatched Silpha from the ground, casting a disdainful gaze upon her. Considering her as a mere human, he derided the existence of humans as lower beings incapable of comprehending his devilish way of thinking. Despite the disdain, the Majin revealed a sinister desire to make Silpha his underling. With unwavering determination, he declared his intention to subject her to his malevolent influence, vowing to marinate her in his miasma and use her as a slave until she perished. In the midst of the unfolding chaos, Lloyd finally grasped the malevolent technique the Majin used to subjugate the bear wolves. Seeking confirmation, the Majin affirmed Lloyd's realization and went on to elucidate his sinister method. He disclosed that initially, he gathered the wildlife in the forest as bait, luring the bear wolves among them. Subsequently, he ruthlessly slew all the parents, leaving only the vulnerable offspring. To further manipulate the young bear wolves, he immersed them in his miasma, fostering the illusion that he was their caretaker. Despite the grim admission of their parents' demise, the bear wolves succumbed to the Majin's overpowering miasma, rendering them obedient. As Lloyd processed this information, he could not help but deem the Majin as cruel and heartless for orchestrating such a malevolent scheme. However, in an unexpected turn, the Majin noticed that Lloyd was breathing freely within the presence of his miasma. Perplexed by this anomaly, the Majin wondered how Lloyd could move so naturally, seemingly unaffected by the oppressive influence of his dark miasma. Lloyd, displaying an air of nonchalance, replied that he had no idea, adding an element of mystery to his resilience against the Majin's dark powers. The Majin's frustration intensified as Lloyd responded with casual indifference, seemingly unaffected by the oppressive magic that had consumed everyone else. This nonchalant attitude only served to exacerbate the Majin's vexation, making his efforts feel futile. Suddenly, Majin Pazuzu, in a shocking revelation, noticed Grimoire's presence. Stricken with disbelief, Majin Pazuzu refused to accept that a Majin would assist a human, given the long-standing tradition of Majins remaining unbound to humans. Expressing disdain for Grimoire's form, he labeled him a disgrace to the Majin name. Despite Grimoire's intention to offer advice, he restrained himself, deciding to relish in Pazuzu's distress. Majin Pazuzu, seizing the opportunity, commanded his underlings to attack Lloyd. In response, Lloyd, recognizing the need for a considerable amount of magical energy to confront the multitude of magic beasts, harnessed the power within him. Acknowledging his lack of finesse in controlling the output levels, he executed his magical ability. A mesmerizing image of a motherhood relationship unfolded before the monsters, captivating every creature in the area and drawing them towards Lloyd. This unexpected display shocked Pazuzu, witnessing the monsters being attracted to Lloyd as if he were their mother. Pleased with the success of his magic, Lloyd had effectively seized control over the magic beasts from the Majin. Even Grimoire, despite his initial resistance, felt a subtle effect of the magic. Taking charge, Lloyd commanded one of the monsters to release Tao from its grasp, covering her naked body with his cape as a gesture of protection and relief. The tides were turned in Lloyd's favor as his mastery over magic and unexpected connection with the monsters shifted the balance of power in the unfolding conflict. Mage and Pazuzu, amidst the chaos, could not help but acknowledge Lloyd's fascinating skills in effortlessly dispelling the intense miasma. He attempted to unleash more miasma, however Pazuzu's efforts were futile, as Grimoire warned him that the magical beasts already remembered everything. Undeterred, the monsters, now aware of their pride as magical beasts and the fact that Pazuzu had slain their parents, violently surged towards him. Lloyd, observing the true leadership of the bear-wolf pack, marveled at their autonomous strength, free from manipulation. He watched in fascination as the magical beasts, now acting on their own will, bit and attacked Pazuzu. Witnessing this unexpected turn of events, Lloyd admired the creature's resilience. In a fit of rage, Mage and Pazuzu retaliated ferociously, grabbing the beasts and forcefully smashing them against each other. He trashed them with his feet, infuriated by their defiance and the vengeance they sought for the deaths of their parents. As the Mage furiously fought the magical beasts, he expressed his anger, belittling them as lower than insects. Pazuzu, still seething with fury, decided to teach Lloyd a lesson for interfering with his ambitions. He confidently declared that magic would have no effect on him, emphasizing his invulnerability. This comment triggered a memory for Lloyd, recalling Grimoire's explanation that Magians could not die from magic, although Grimoire had emphasized that this had been the case in the past so far, hinting at the possibility of exceptions in the current time. The conflict reached a new level of intensity as Mage and Pazuzu, infuriated, ascended into the sky, decided to unleash the full might of his abilities. Lloyd, witnessing the Magian's resilience and apparent invincibility, acknowledged the difficulty of defeating such a formidable opponent. However, rather than succumb to despair, Lloyd's curiosity surged, prompting him to reveal the true extent of his potential and the terrifying nature of his abilities. As Lloyd demonstrated the overwhelming power he possessed, both Grimoire and Mage and Pazuzu found themselves gripped by terror. In this moment of fear, Grimoire turned to Pazuzu, questioning whether he now comprehended why magic had proven futile against Lloyd. The explanation was straightforward: Lloyd's magic power was on an astronomical scale, rendering any attempt by Pazuzu's magic to penetrate it futile. The stark difference in their magical prowess became glaringly evident. Embracing his potential, Lloyd expressed his delight at having a myriad of magical techniques he wanted to explore. Now that he could unleash his terrifying power upon Pazuzu, the battlefield became a stage for Lloyd to experiment with his abilities and turn the tide of the conflict in his favor. The true extent of Lloyd's terrifying abilities sent shivers down Mage and Pazuzu's spine, plunging him into a state of intensified terror as if trapped in a nightmarish dream. Lloyd, exhilarated by the peak of his power, initiated a defensive barrier that Mage and Pazuzu barely managed to avoid. Perplexed as to why Lloyd intended to trap him, Pazuzu realized that Lloyd had not even performed the chant for the barrier, a realization that filled him with fear. Their eyes locked, and in a moment of fearful realization, Pazuzu understood that Lloyd had no intention of engaging in direct combat, but instead aimed to imprison him. In a desperate attempt to escape, Pazuzu frantically attempted to flee. However, the defensive barrier persistently pursued him. Grimoire questioned Lloyd about the number of spells he intended to activate simultaneously. Lloyd, having around 20 spells ready, fused Grimoire into his hand to amplify his magical capabilities. Even further, he was ready to chant even more spells. Lloyd activated his Dimension Canopy spell, trapping Pazuzu within the barrier. Amused by his success, Lloyd had finally captured Pazuzu. Trapped and frustrated, Pazuzu attempted to break the barrier to no avail. Inquiring about Lloyd's intentions, he speculated if Lloyd planned to use him as a guinea pig. Lloyd reminded Pazuzu of his claim that magic had no effect on him and questioned whether Pazuzu had experimented by combining different species of magical beasts, indicating the hybrid appearance of some bearwolves. Growing increasingly agitated, Pazuzu began to belittle other species, prompting Lloyd to initiate a high-speed spell deployment. Chanting at an extraordinary speed, Lloyd activated the highest tiers of earth, water, fire, and wind magic over 100 times at 3 times the normal speed. In a blink of an eye, the sheer volume of spells erased Pazuzu's resentment and pleas. Opening spell gates inside the barrier, Lloyd released 240 highest tier spells in the span of 1 minute, obliterating Pazuzu's life force. Unyielding, Lloyd decided to persist in this onslaught for an additional 30 minutes, ensuring Pazuzu's complete defeat. The battlefield became a testament to the overwhelming power and relentless determination of Lloyd as he continued to dominate the confrontation. In the aftermath of the relentless magical onslaught from Lloyd, Mage and Pazuzu found himself on the brink of death within the defensive barrier. Grimoire, being a fellow Magian, clarified that, technically, magic did affect their kind, causing discomfort and stress akin to the effects of light and sound. Mage and Pazuzu had experienced an overwhelming level of stress from Lloyd's powerful spells, leaving him nearly lifeless within the barrier. As Pazuzu half turned into ashes, a profound disappointment filled him. Having dedicated centuries to training magical beasts, he now faced defeat and betrayal. Lloyd, observing Pazuzu's miserable state, could not help but smirk at the downfall of the once powerful Majin. Amidst the aftermath, with Pazuzu's malevolent miasma dissipating, consciousness returned to those who had been affected. Lloyd, frantic with concern, rushed towards his brother. While Lloyd checked on his sibling, Grimoire engaged in a conversation with the fading Pazuzu. Grimoire emphasized the idea that people don't follow those who only speak of their anguish. Instead, he highlighted the value of companionship with those who find joy in each other's company, subtly indicating Lloyd's approach of doing whatever brought him enjoyment. As Pazuzu was fading away, Grimoire revealed his true mischievous intentions. Grimoire harbored a desire for revenge against Lloyd. After gathering a significant amount of magic energy, he desired to set the stage for potential conflict in the future. As Pazuzu faded away, a realization dawned upon him in his final moments. He recognized that his defeat stemmed from a lack of enjoyment in his life. In a last plea, he beseeched Grimoire to carry forward his ambitions. With his final breath, Pazuzu's words echoed, and he vanished into the ether. Grimoire, absorbing the remnants of Pazuzu, gathered the trace amounts of mana left in his fading form. Determined and fueled by the desire for revenge, Grimoire vowed to carry out Pazuzu's ambitions. The swirling determination in his eyes hinted at the challenges that lay ahead. Meanwhile, consciousness returned to the knights and everyone affected by Pazuzu's malevolence. Lloyd, spreading the word that Roberto had successfully defeated the Majin, unleashed a wave of happiness among the people. However, in the midst of this triumph, Grimoire acknowledged that his current power level was not sufficient to defeat Lloyd, setting the stage for a potential conflict between the two in the future. The next day in the kingdom's castle, the king commended Alberto for subjugating the Majin and magical beasts. However, he questioned Alberto's decision to only bring personal guards, deeming it imprudent. Alberto acknowledged his mistake without offering excuses. When asked about the adventurers Tao and Roberto, Alberto reported that by the time everyone regained consciousness, he had already vanished, and Tao had gone after him before they could express their gratitude. The king expressed a desire to meet those who had protected them, especially the mage Roberto. He acknowledged that the one who had gained the most from the quest was Lloyd. In a surprising turn of events, Alberto suggested granting Lloyd the right to become king. The king acknowledged Lloyd's accomplishments, emphasizing that the lack of casualties among the magical beasts could be attributed to the enchanted weapon Lloyd wielded. Despite recognizing Lloyd's worthiness, the king raised concerns about the potential rivalry between Lloyd and Alberto if the former were to become king. Alberto accepted the reality and stated that if it would benefit the country, he did not mind not becoming king. He emphasized that he had no intention of losing in their rivalry. Amused, the king asked Lloyd if he wanted to become Alberto's rival and compete for the throne. Lloyd humbly refused and ventured out of the castle to play. Outside, he had a new companion, an offspring of a bearwolf that had followed him home. Despite the bearwolves usually remaining in the forest, this one had chosen to stay with Lloyd. Grimoire expressed frustration, noting that the bearwolf's reaction was different for him compared to Lloyd. Grimoire explained that bearwolves tend to take on the qualities of the magic they consume. Due to Lloyd's calming magic, the once vicious qualities of the bearwolves, including Pazuzu's, had disappeared. Lloyd did not see any issues with this change, and he acknowledged that magical beasts become like their masters. Lloyd gave a name to the bearwolf Shiro, due to its all-white fur. Silpha found the name fitting and expressed her happiness at seeing Lloyd with a magical beast companion. Silpha admitted her surprise, as she had doubted that Lloyd would actually keep a magical beast as a pet. Lloyd explained that his family had a tradition of keeping loyal dogs, and magical beasts weren't much different when it came to obeying strong masters. Silpha remembered Alberto's assumption of keeping a magical beast as a pet would be an easy feat for Lloyd. In the castle, the king and Alberto observed Lloyd from the gallery, both recognizing him as a humble person. Alberto emphasized that Lloyd was too great a person to be limited to being just a king. Lloyd, inspired by Silpha's experience with pets, desired to ask her something. He ordered his new pet Shiro to perform various commands, demonstrating the bearwolf's obedience. Lloyd was able to teach Shiro simple orders immediately, but when he asked Silpha how to adjust commands to include details like speed, direction, or mannerisms, she revealed that it falls within the domain of a beast master. Silpha also mentioned that she had heard they can control magical beasts with magic. Lloyd, eager to enhance his control over Shiro through magic, demonstrated his attempt by commanding the bearwolf to spin around 30 times and then bark. He had even written the command into his magic. However, to their surprise, when Lloyd applied the magic, Shiro seemed confused and started performing a seemingly comical dance. Silpha emphasized the importance of repetitive training and suggested that Lloyd try imprinting the command by verbally saying it while sending the magic to Shiro. Despite the effectiveness of this method, Lloyd found it time-consuming and lacking the flexibility he desired. Silpha acknowledged the challenge, and both of them began pondering the next course of action. Suddenly, a realization struck Silpha, and she remembered someone well-versed in such matters. To their shared realization, Lloyd had also thought of the same person. Despite some reluctance, they wondered if they should visit the private garden of the sixth princess of Salem, Elise de Salem. The mention of Elise de Salem hinted at a potential mentor or expert who could aid Lloyd in mastering his magical control over Shiro. As they ventured into the garden, the breathtaking beauty of the sixth princess Erai's garden tower left them in awe. Grimoire was curious about the ownership of such a tower on the outskirts of the castle and pondered what kind of person Erai's might be. Lloyd revealed that Erai's is his sister, 3 years older than him. Due to her lack of succession rights, she led a life similar to his own, pursuing her interests. The garden reflected her love for animals, hosting not only dogs and cats but also reptiles and magical beasts. Grimoire realized that the precedent for keeping magical beasts inside the castle was likely established by Erai's own garden. Their musings were interrupted by the appearance of Alice, Erai's personal maid. Alice greeted Lloyd and Silpha, and Lloyd commented on the seeming fatigue of taking care of the animals. However, Alice clarified that she felt more like she was taking care of Erai's, who constantly brought in new animals to the garden. Lloyd revealed to Alice that he had a question for his sister Elise, but Silpha intervened, attempting to warn him. Suddenly, Erai's jumped from above and landed directly toward her brother. Startled, everyone watched as she fell over him, hugging him. Just as Lloyd was about to greet her, she surprised everyone by kissing him on the lips, leaving Lloyd unconscious. Alice expressed her frustration with Elise's actions. After the encounter, they all sat at the table together. Erai's was surprised to see Lloyd visiting her, and Alice insisted that it was because Erai's frequent kisses had kept him away. Lloyd, still dejected from the kiss, Erai's acknowledged that he had came to ask about the beowulf. While having tea, Lloyd introduced his pet, Shiro, and was surprised that Erai's immediately recognized it as a beowulf. Erai's explained that she had a feeling the mana, or Marioku, must have affected Shiro. She approached the beowulf and hugged him. Silpha emphasized the need to head back, expressing her curiosity about Erai's apparent lack of understanding of mana and her doubt that Erai's could communicate on a heartfelt level. Despite Silpha's concerns, Lloyd insisted that she wait a little longer. Lloyd urged Erai's to show them her magical beast as well. To everyone's surprise, Elise revealed that she had already called it, and a magical beast stood behind them. As they turned to look, the beast immediately approached Elise. She introduced the magical beast, petting it, and named it Fenrir Ruru. Shiro was visibly shocked in the presence of Erai's magical beast, Fenrir Ruru. Erai's pointed out that it was no wonder Shiro was shocked, as Fenrir Ruru was an advanced class of beowulf. Silpha and Alberto were still astonished by the swift movements of Fenrir Ruru. Silpha emphasized the pressure exerted by Fenrir Ruru, making it difficult to consider it a lesser being. Lloyd affirmed Silpha's observation and mentioned that both Fenrir Ruru and Shiro could easily hunt a dragon. What surprised him even more was that Fenrir Ruru managed to bypass his detection. Silpha, in particular, was astonished because she had not even seen Erai's giving any orders to Fenrir Ruru. Lloyd was intrigued by Erai's ability to command Fenrir Ruru with perfect precision, even from a distance. He observed as Fenrir Ruru swiftly took Silpha's headband without her noticing and approached Erai's. Realizing that Erai's had given a precise command without any visible motion, Lloyd expressed his desire to communicate with Shiro in the same manner. Lloyd openly voiced his plea to Erai's, expressing his eagerness to learn the skill of communicating with animals like his sister. Erai's warned him that the training would be challenging, but Lloyd's response remained positive, and his determination to learn only increased. Erai's, recognizing his enthusiasm, decided to teach him the ultimate technique of communicating with animals. With unwavering confidence, Erai's declared that the technique to communicate with animals is simply love. The other sighed, finding it to be an obvious and straightforward answer. To emphasize her point, Erai's demonstrated the power of love by putting it into action. After expressing love, she commanded the animals with a simple, "Come here," and to everyone's surprise, every animal rushed towards her, leaving both Silpha and Lloyd in shock. Alice, expressing doubt, told Lloyd that Erai's might look like a genius or someone who attracts magical beasts effortlessly, but she's simply loved by animals since the old days. Erai's, angered by Alice's remark, refuted the assumption, stating that anyone can do it with the Fuwa and Kiwon feelings. To the shock of everyone present, the animals started to gather around Alice instead. Frustrated, Alice asked Erai's to stop the frolicking, while Silpha expressed her desire to leave. She found the term love to be too vague to serve as a reference for communicating with animals. As the animals gathered around Lloyd, he had a realization and figured out the blind spot. Silpha and Alice looked at him with curiosity, confused by what he had just discovered. The unexpected turn of events hinted at Lloyd's perceptiveness and ability to pick up on subtle cues. Silpha was shocked as Lloyd expressed his interest in love. Without hesitation, Lloyd jumped over and hugged Silpha, recognizing the warmth and kindness. She always exuded a warmth that stemmed from love. Silpha, blushing, firmly held Lloyd in her grasp, savoring the warmth of the moment. Lloyd insisted that Silpha teach him more about love, and she agreed on the condition that he was okay with her social status. The two shared a tender moment, ready to explore the complexities of love together. Lloyd had finally discovered the reason behind Erai's ability to command animals without giving explicit orders. He acknowledged Erai's genius, realizing that she could unconsciously command animals by syncing images with them, directly connecting her head to theirs using mana-shaped images. Unlike traditional orders, Erai synchronized her thoughts with the animals through mental imagery. Inspired by Erai's technique, Lloyd attempted to do the same. Concentrating his mana, he created images in his mind and directed his thoughts directly into Shiro's head. In a sudden and surprising moment, Shiro stood up, looked at Lloyd, and started spinning around rapidly. Silpha and Alice were shocked to witness Lloyd achieve this feat without giving any explicit orders. Erai, too, was surprised by Lloyd's ability to control Shiro through shared mental images. Lloyd further demonstrated his newfound skill by making Shiro turn 3 times with precision in speed, position, and height. Lloyd was delighted with his success, indulging in playing with Shiro. Alice recognized Lloyd as a genius in the art of sharing mental images, a skill crucial for a magical beast tamer. She speculated that Erai's power was like nature, uncontrollable, but Lloyd had mastered and controlled it. Alice foresaw that if Lloyd could master magical beast taming, he could drive away the animals gathered there, increasing Erai's vacation time for activities like going to a cafe and shopping. However, Erai's was not satisfied or convinced. She persisted that it was all about love, and that there was nothing like sharing thoughts or manipulation. She emphasized that everybody, including herself, loved each other, and it was not anything complex or difficult like sharing thoughts. Despite her insistence, Lloyd objected and emphasized the importance of love. As Erai stood there, she listened to Lloyd explaining that the power sprouted because she loved all the animals very much. Even if one shared their mind, if one did not sympathize with the animals, they wouldn't move. Lloyd found the depth of love to be crucial. The 3 ladies Erai, Silpha, and Alice were embarrassed, confused, and somewhat dissatisfied with Lloyd's objection because of his assumptions. Suddenly, the animals started a commotion due to Erai's thoughts. Moreover, Silpha and Alice expressed their frustration by strangling Lloyd, that created a humorous and chaotic moment. Lloyd, covered in bandages from the chaotic experience in the garden, found the unfolding events to be quite terrible. Silpha apologized for the inconvenience she caused, but Lloyd was thankful for the experience, as it helped him understand a little more about magical beast tamers. Silpha also agreed and expressed a desire to visit them again sometime. While walking in the corridor, Lloyd indulged with Shiro. Silpha decided to start their sword practice, and Lloyd made a disappointed and dejected face. Silpha teasingly deemed his excuses useless, as his disappointment was already visible, conveying his thoughts without needing to share minds. However, the mood changed when Alberto appeared on the scene, insisting to Silpha that he wanted something with Lloyd. Silpha, in turn, insisted on having a sword practice, creating an uneasy tension among them. Lloyd inquired his brother about what was going on today, and Alberto expressed his desire to introduce him to someone. The unknown person turned out to be none other than Lloyd's older brother, the 4th Prince Diane. Lloyd was quite confused to see his presence after a long time. Diane, in his forging workshop, inquired about the magic enchanted on Alberto's sword. Alberto brought out his enchanted sword, and Diane directly hit the sword with a hammer. He expressed disbelief, stating that even though he had seen the sword, he still could not believe it. Diane decided to judge for himself whether Alberto was telling the truth or not. Alberto explained to Lloyd that Diane was a blacksmith who left to study abroad in Batrum at the age of 10, famous for its blacksmithing. He wanted to learn more about his dream of enchanting. Lloyd remembered those times when they used to play together and found it amazing that Diane went abroad to study for the sake of the country, despite being a prince. Diane was embarrassed and swiftly redirected the conversation, stating that the backstory did not matter. Returning to the main topic, Diane encouraged Lloyd to enchant the sword he had prepared. He assured Lloyd that he had everything he needed and requested him to ask for anything if he fell short. Diane also warned Lloyd against getting hurt in the process. Lloyd carefully examined the sword, while Diane could not shake off the disbelief lingering in his mind. Enchanting itself was a high-level skill, and enchanting a magic sword was a feat beyond most mages, even in Batrum. Lloyd, who had become a big talker in the 7 years since Diane had last seen him, was about to teach Lloyd a valuable life lesson. As Lloyd began the process of enchanting, he poured specialized ink onto the pen and meticulously wrote chants all over the sword, filling it entirely. Casually, he inquired whether that would be enough for Diane. The shock overwhelmed Diane as he literally witnessed Lloyd writing enchantments. It was unfathomable for him. Alberto, too, was sweating, witnessing Lloyd's meticulous skills. Diane pondered the situation, realizing that even a beginner could tell that Lloyd's enchanting process went far beyond just making it fast. The concentration of the spells and the precision in writing were on another level. Diane could not comprehend the skills written on the sword. As he inspected it further, he finally understood the real capabilities: increased strength, elasticity, self-purification, and self-repair. Upon realizing the potential, Diane saw an opportunity for his dream to come true. His dream was to create the strongest magic sword, a dream Lloyd remembered well. Magic swords were on a different level from ordinary enchantments. To create a magic sword, enchantments needed to be written on the sword while it was in the melting state to achieve a higher level of enchantment. It was the strongest weapon, completed only when the enchanter and the blacksmith worked in unison. Lloyd knew the intensity of the task, recalling how his hands shook when he had enchanted Alberto's magic swords. Magic swords were exceptionally rare, requiring an absurd amount of effort to make one. Diane revealed to Lloyd that he had always been interested in magic since childhood. However, he lacked the intelligence of Alberto and the innate talent for magic. Still, the magic swords fascinated him. He wanted to make swords that anyone could use, even those who could not wield magic. His dream was to provide the soldiers of the country with magic swords, create an unbeatable magic sword corps, and ultimately establish a country where anyone could use magic and magic swords. Lloyd found Diane's idea intriguing and agreed to help him achieve his dream. The workshop buzzed with excitement as the brothers united in their shared goal. Diane took charge of their work as they delved into it with enthusiasm. Lloyd, curious about the magic Diane wanted for the sword, inquired about the element. Diane promptly declared it had to be fire, a sword that spat out flames with each swing. Lloyd suggested the ardent fireball spell, but Diane objected. For magic swords, one could only fold the metal 5 times, allowing a maximum of 5 lines of chant with 1 line per fold. Lloyd, considering the limitations, decided to shorten the chant to 2 lines. Diane, perplexed by this, watched as Lloyd meticulously inscribed the chant on the metal. However, as they observed, the chant settling over the metal broke into pieces. Realizing that the fireball's chant was too heavy for the metal, Lloyd decided to lower the concentration to 3 to 4 lines and attempted it again. Diane, surprised and confused, was left momentarily speechless. Suddenly, they noticed someone observing them from afar. It was Shiro and Silpha. Undeterred by the challenges, Lloyd tried the chant again, bending the metal, only to have it break into pieces once more. Lloyd apologized for the wasted effort, acknowledging the difficulty of handling such intricate enchantments. Lloyd found himself challenged as he struggled to understand why the metal kept breaking. Despite significantly reducing the fireball magic strength, the issue persisted. Grimoire, witnessing Lloyd's struggle for the first time, noticed something about the magical marrow and whispered into Lloyd's ear. Diane, sensing Lloyd's tension, reassured him not to stress too much. Diane, acknowledging this, admitted that the magic marrow he had procured was inexpensive. Lloyd examined the magical marrow and realized that it lacked purity. The red magic flower was scarce, and it even contained a strange black powder to increase quantity. Lloyd clarified that, to craft a magic sword, the marrow needed to be pure. He questioned Diane about possessing any red magic flower made from the core of monsters, but Diane confessed that he did not have any because monster cores were rare. Disheartened, Lloyd considered the possibility of sneaking out of the castle to defeat monsters in dungeons. Silpha, however, suggested to Diane that he could go to the dungeons himself to acquire the red magic flower. Diane objected, stating that, being a prince, he could not venture into the dungeons. Silpha disclosed that she had previously suggested to the king, following the magical beast incident a few days ago, the idea of allowing Lloyd to experience the world to broaden his horizons. The king was pleased with the suggestion, and now Silpha proposed taking their first step toward becoming adventurers by visiting the Adventurers Guild. They went to an adventurer guild to register themselves as fully fledged adventurers. Lloyd was quite intrigued to see an adventurer guild for the first time. Silpha revealed that it had also been a long time for her to come here. Lloyd acknowledged that she used to be an adventurer in the past. As they ventured into the Adventurers Guild, receptionist Katarina welcomed them and instructed them to register by providing their names, ages, addresses, and registered professions. She emphasized the importance of honesty and urged them to write down the information truthfully. Lloyd filled out the registration paper completely. After reading the paper, Katarina realized that Lloyd was a prince. She warned him about the dangers of being an adventurer, mentioning potential injuries and, in some cases, death. She inquired if he was okay with it. Silpha revealed to Lloyd that social status did not matter in the guild. Here, one gained or lost based on their powers, and the doctrine was solely based on pure skills. Lloyd acknowledged the dangers and confirmed to Katarina that he did not have any problems with them. Finally, the receptionist asked Lloyd to place his hand on a crystal ball to measure his abilities and determine his adventurer rank. Lloyd felt tense, seeing the crystal ball used for ability measurement. He had forgotten about its existence. The ball housed a small amount of mana that circulated through the body upon touch, measuring the person's status. Realizing that touching it would only foresee a future with an explosive ending that would stand out too much, Lloyd further suppressed his own mana, reaching the level of a water flea. He placed his hand on the crystal ball and received an overall rank of E. Guild members sitting behind laughed loudly at Lloyd's lowest rank of E. However, upon closer inspection, the receptionist realized that Lloyd's mana abilities were at rank A, which is certainly easy for high nobles and royal families blessed with bloodline talents. Most nobles usually fell under B and C ranks, making a rank mana reserved for highly skilled mages. The receptionist recognized that Lloyd had achieved rank A despite being only 10 years old. She was certain that Lloyd was gifted with a ridiculous amount of talent in magic. The receptionist declared Lloyd's adventurer talent to be on par with the Silver Sword Princess. Only Lloyd knew that he had suppressed his abilities below 10%. Everyone was shocked by the revelation that Lloyd was on par with the Silver Sword Princess, who conquered countless dungeons with demon-like strength before rising to a rank and quitting being an adventurer. Silpha had decided to take dungeon-related requests right away. A big and ugly man approached her, revealing that dungeon-related requests required at least a B rank or someone with a higher adventurer level. He insisted that Silpha take him with her instead of Lloyd, insultingly calling him a brat and suggesting Silpha go on a date. Before the man could finish speaking, Silpha turned around and in a split second shaved off his mustache with her sword. The man stood, watching as his mustache was wiped away, and did nothing but stare at his now bare face. Silpha then introduced herself as a former A-rank adventurer, and the receptionist further disclosed that Silpha was the Sword Princess. Everyone in the guild was shocked by the revelation, having witnessed the Silver Sword Princess before their own eyes. However, the receptionist explained that re-registering put one at a 2-rank demotion, and ultimately Silpha's rank for now would be C. Silpha acknowledged the need to find an adventurer with a B rank as a companion. Just at that moment, Tao appeared on the scene and decided to help Lloyd with his predicament. Silpha refused Tao's help and started to walk away. Tao expressed her frustration, telling Silpha to stop. Silpha emphasized that Tao had appeared out of thin air to help them, and inquired if she was not busy looking for Roberto. Tao revealed that she had looked for him everywhere, but could not find him anywhere. She even went to the dungeon looking for him, but instead became strong in the process and eventually got promoted to a B rank. Silpha emphasized if that was not good enough for Tao, but Tao, frustrated, expressed her desire to have a boyfriend. Tao suggested setting up a meetup, a tea party with Alberto, who resembled Roberto. In exchange, she offered her help with their problem. As Tao and Silpha argued, guild members realized that Lloyd, despite having the Silver Sword Princess by his side, also had Tao with him, leaving them shocked. Lloyd acknowledged that Silpha used to be an amazing adventurer. Silpha found it embarrassing, but it was true. She became an adventurer for training when she was still immature. They headed toward the quest board and started browsing for the proper dungeon to explore. After selecting one, they ventured inside, defeated some monsters, picked up the treasure box, and on the way, Lloyd explained to Tao the need for the treasure box to create magic marrow. Finally, they returned to the kingdom. At Diane's workshop, Alberto came to inquire about their progress. Diane revealed that he had been refining and practicing his blacksmith skills until Lloyd and the others returned with the materials. Diane explained that it had been a few days since they headed to the dungeon, and although he knew they wouldn't be back so quickly, he insisted that if he had the materials, he could work right away. Alberto acknowledged this and shared something with Diane that shocked him. Diane inquired if the war was close. They found themselves in a suspicious situation. Diane forcibly grabbed Lloyd and told him to wait a little longer for Lloyd's arrival, emphasizing that they would start back to work to produce many magic swords. Alberto firmly replied that he brought them together simply because he wanted them to spend time as brothers like they used to in the past. He assured Diane that there were no politics involved and encouraged him not to worry about the war. Alberto urged Diane to continue his experiments on the magic swords, emphasizing that saving even one person with such a sword would be a great achievement. As Diane was tense and worried, he saw a glimmer of hope when he noticed Lloyd and his team coming back from the quest. He assured Alberto that they did not have to wait for that day and they would soon see it. Both Alberto and Diane found Lloyd to be quite amazing. Alberto emphasized his feelings toward Lloyd, mentioning that whenever he sees him smile, it sparks a glimmer of strength and hope in him. With all the materials gathered, they immediately started working on the magic sword. Finally, they conjured a true magic sword. They went to the shooting playground to test it, and as they tried the sword, it produced so much firepower that it literally engulfed the entire shooting area in flames, leaving both Alberto and Diane speechless. Alberto found Lloyd to be someone who could make their worries disappear. Lloyd realized that he had put too much effort into the sword. He decided to tone it down going forward, as it ended up blowing up in his face. They gave the new magic swords to the knights to try out. The swords, capable of shooting fireballs, surprised and fascinated the knights. They were shocked to see the idea of using magic and shooting fireballs by simply swinging the swords, experiencing a real spellblade in action. However, Diane expressed dissatisfaction to Lloyd, stating that these swords weren't powerful enough compared to the Delord's sword they created the first time. He scolded Lloyd, questioning if he was slacking off in his duty. Lloyd, while hiding the truth, replied that he was not slacking off and that they were just lucky with the Dilord sword. To Alberto's surprise, the swords exceeded his expectations. A spellbound sword could only be forged with the cooperation of a master blacksmith and master sorcerer, and making several was a miraculous feat. Lloyd passed the credit to Diane, praising his excellent smithing skills. Diane recognized Lloyd's efforts in enchantments, but Lloyd insisted that it was possible only because of Diane. Either way, Diane was quite happy, acknowledging that they were a perfect team, and with the two of them on the job, they could accomplish anything. Lloyd managed to craft the magic swords that the knights had. Those were only enchanted with ordinary fireball spells, as adding more magical enhancements would have made them dangerous. In a sudden moment, Alberto spoke, stating that Lloyd's perfect partner is him, as he was the one who united them both together, making the sword creation possible. Diane, motivated, called to his brothers to get back to making spellbound swords. After the events of the day, as night fell, Lloyd reflected on the various occurrences during the quest for materials gathering and forging. He sensed Alberto's worry and wondered if something significant was approaching. As Shiro went to sleep, Lloyd, still awake, gazed outside from his window. In the courtyard, he noticed a presence. Wondering who it might be, he observed a peculiar emptiness like a void. Despite Shiro being sensitive to such things, he could not sense anything unusual magical. Lloyd considered the recent reports about mysterious individuals who did not have any presence and used weird sorceries. He decided to investigate, using his wind-class spell Flight X Sprint. Lloyd launched himself from his bed, soaring through the air, and landed just before the unknown person in the courtyard. As Lloyd stood before the unknown person, their gazes met for a split second. Lloyd greeted the person with a friendly, "Good evening." However, as the unknown individual attempted to fly away, they found themselves trapped in a cage conjured by Lloyd, who had taken precautions. Lloyd inquired about the intentions of the trespasser. The unknown person, now revealed to be a girl, explained that she did not want to use her abilities on a child. She blew away the clothing that was hiding her true identity, revealing her short outfit. Lloyd, puzzled and wondering how she was not cold in such attire, suddenly found himself engulfed in a sweet flower scent. Feeling numb and dizzy, he realized it was poison. Desperate, Lloyd attempted to use healing and purification magic, but the girl apologetically informed him that nobody could purify her poison. She identified herself as a member of the assassin guild, Poison Moth Ren. The girl revealed that nobody had the ability to purify her poison. Lloyd acknowledged that purification was a magic that detoxified all poisons in known existence. If that did not work, Lloyd deemed the poison to be an unknown variant. It was a poison based on mana, known as poison attribute transmutation. There were a few born with this unusual property of mana. Arise, Lloyd's sister, possessed a similar ability. Some among them lost their lives due to an inability to control their powers, especially those with abilities that harmed those around them. People called them Norrowear. The girl affirmed Lloyd's understanding, confirming that she was indeed a Norrowear of poison. She revealed that she was born spreading poison around her, earning her a disgraceful name like Poison Moth Ren. To contain the poison, she usually wore a thick layer of clothes. But she takes it off, the curse overflows from her body. She demonstrated this ability by knocking down Lloyd's magic trap with just a kick, shattering it into pieces. Intrigued by the demonstration, Lloyd acknowledged that, although he had only used the low-defense sky canopy, he wondered whether she melted or broke it with poison. The girl revealed that he had not taken much poison, and while he probably wouldn't die, she cautioned him about the pain he would feel for the next 2 to 3 days. As she greeted him, she vanished, leaving Lloyd intrigued by her abilities. Grimoire, engulfed in anger, scolded him for admiring her in such a vulnerable situation. Lloyd acknowledged Grimoire's presence and realized that he had awakened. Grimoire had woken up due to the scene he left behind upon leaving the room. More importantly, Grimoire inquired if Lloyd was okay with the poison. Lloyd replied that he was fine, revealing that the poison had not been detoxified, but he was slowly healing himself with healing magic, recovery breathing, and the poison was not potent enough to outdamage his healing abilities. Lloyd had pondered the fact that Pazuzu's domination mana did not affect him, but he realized that Ren's poison mana was on a higher level than a Mage's, intriguing him. Grimoire scolded him again for admiring her and inquired why he had not escaped despite being able to move. Lloyd revealed his intention was to let her guide them to the assassin's hideout. He mentioned hearing from Silpha that Ren was probably a member of an organization called the Assassin's Guild. This organization consisted of 6 former wanted criminals and wielded certain special powers. Rumors suggested they also possess a special constitution spells. Lloyd was quite happy to realize that the assassins had one of their special traits. However, Grimoire questioned how Lloyd would chase after Ren since she had completely hidden her presence. Grimoire was even surprised that Lloyd had noticed her presence. Lloyd emphasized that when she hid herself perfectly, the air sounds and smells all disappeared. Wherever she was, it was as if she erased the space around her. It became easier to detect when someone got used to it, and being undetectable made her stand out more. In a sudden moment, Silpha also appeared on the scene and called out to Lloyd. Meanwhile, somewhere in town, in an underground alley, the notorious assassins were in their hideout. One of them recognized that Ren had stopped somewhere and escaped without killing the one who saw her. Ren tried to clarify that it was just a kid, and she further revealed that she did not come away empty-handed. She reported that they had been making spellbound swords in huge numbers. The members of the assassin group figured out that they had been preparing for war and emphasized that now it's their turn. However, one of the members told Ren to stop trying to be like Jade and wanted her to sink in the fact that their leader was gone now. She insisted and opposed the idea, content that Jade would come. One of the members suggested leaving the argument at that and emphasized the presence of someone who had been eavesdropping on them. It was none other than Lloyd, sitting above them. The members immediately turned around to look at the unwanted presence, and Lloyd came down from above. Meanwhile, Ren was quite shockingly surprised to see Lloyd had found them, despite the poison that should have been working on him. The assassin member inquired if the kid Ren encountered was the seventh prince, and they further asked about Lloyd, questioning if he was the one responsible for all the spellbounds being made for the army. One of the assassin members had figured out that the kid kept a modest profile, but hid his abilities and ambitions behind his facade. As the assassin members stood together in a defensive stance against Lloyd, they informed him that he had found the assassin guild and threatened him, making it clear that he wouldn't escape so easily. In that moment, Lloyd stood unfazed, his expression betraying no hint of fear. He casually deactivated his barrier, much to Grimoire's evident frustration. Lloyd, however, had a different perspective. With a nonchalant demeanor, he acknowledged the unique abilities each assassin possessed. Blocking them all would have been a missed opportunity to witness these distinct skills in action. Lloyd, fully prepared, assumed a fighting stance. Activating his control class spell, tracing Tao followers of the Orient Hyakekan form, he readied himself to face the assassins head-on. As he stood in a stance resembling Tao, Lloyd instructed Grimoire to step aside for this one. However, Grimoire insisted vehemently for him to put his barrier back up. The assassin members advanced, and as one of them approached with a cape in hand, he disappeared before landing a strike. Unfazed, Lloyd sensed the assassin despite their flexibility and maneuverability. He easily countered the attack, surprising the assassin with his skill in hand-to-hand combat. Lloyd was content that Tao's training was proving effective, blocking the blows adeptly. However, he noticed the assassin's exceptional agility. Seizing the assassin's cape, Lloyd revolved it around both arms to use as a cushion. The assassin took the opportunity to introduce himself. Amidst the exchange of blows, he revealed his extraordinary flexibility, claiming he could twist his body in and out of tiny spaces like a mouse. He identified himself as the warp-blighted Babylon, the giant rat. Lloyd found the assassin's flexibility intriguing but wondered about the mechanism behind it, as his body seemed highly unusual. In a sudden turn of events, the masked assassin revealed one eye and chanted the word "sink." Lloyd felt an intense pressure on his body, making him feel unusually heavy. The other assassin introduced him as the Crow, the Dark Raptor, explaining that his words were inherently imbued with mana, being the curse blighted. He maintained silence to avoid causing chaos. The next assassin advanced with sheer force, ready to deliver a powerful punch. Lloyd, struggling with a heavy body due to the Crow's curse, managed to escape its effects and dodged the punch. The impact of the punch shattered the ground below. The Crow was intrigued to see Lloyd overcoming his command. In a sudden turn of events, Lloyd found himself above the assassin, stuck in some kind of mucus. The assassin introduced himself as Galilea, the spider, revealing that his body could transform into mucus, and he was the web blighted. Lloyd tried to push himself out of the mucus, but his clothes remained stuck. As Lloyd, now naked, regained his balance, he pondered the Crow's ability to imbue mana directly into his words. It felt like an invocation, a more primal version of incantations, the very origin of spells. Galilea, the spider assassin, had the ability to turn mana into webs, similar to how Ren manipulated her poison. In the next moment, while suspended in the air, Lloyd utilized reinforced strength to strengthen the piece of cloth in his hand, successfully countering Talia's attack. Talia was intrigued to see Lloyd's unfazed and calm demeanor, even in such a dire situation. Seeing him naked, she inquired if he had lost all fear or shame along the way, and decided to help him find his fear. In an unexpected move, she pierced her own leg with her sword, and Lloyd experienced the same injury on his leg. Introducing herself as Talia of the 100 Pains, she revealed her ability when she wounded herself while gazing at a target. Her victim suffered the same injury. She referred to herself as the Pain Blighted. Lloyd was amazed by this ability and curious about how it worked. Talia pulled her sword out of her leg, and Lloyd noticed a band of mana projected from her eyes to him, indicating she had linked their bodies through magic. Lloyd finally landed on the ground as the assassins stood before them, each having introduced themselves. The rat assassin instructed Ren to stay back to avoid poisoning the entire place. Talia emphasized that she did not mind taking her clothes off, as it helped release the poison more quickly. She inquired if Lloyd had found his fear yet and threatened him further, suggesting she would start looking for his shame. With a grin on his face, Lloyd acknowledged his fear and shame, emphasizing that there was much to try and learn. Swiftly waving his hand above his wound, he healed it in an instant, leaving the assassins standing at a distance confused. Talia, shocked by the healing spell, stared in disbelief as even her own wound had healed. She was confused by the miraculous speed of the healing spell, considering the depth of the wound she had. The next part will be posted tomorrow. Until then, please consider liking and subscribing.